The market on the alien trade world was alive with sound and color. Merchants shouted in many languages, selling goods from across the stars. Ships came and went above the skyline, their engines rumbling like thunder. In the middle of this chaos, a human traveler named Daniel walked quietly, watching with curious eyes. He was far from Earth, far from home, and survival had taught him to stay unnoticed. But something caught his attention that day. A group of armored slavers stood in the open square, showing off those they had captured. Among the prisoners was a young alien woman with silver hair that fell across her shoulders. Her wrists were bound with metal cuffs, and her clothes were torn from travel and rough treatment. Even so, she stood tall, her chin lifted as if she refused to bow. Her eyes, large and filled with quiet strength, searched the crowd. Daniel felt a strange pull when he looked at her. He had seen many people broken by slavery in these markets, but she was different. There was a spark in her, a dignity that no chain could take away. She looked neither weak nor defeated, but alone and in need of help. The slavers shouted her price, calling her nothing more than property. Some merchants laughed. Others raised their hands to bid. Daniel clenched his jaw. He told himself to walk away, to mind his own business. Humans had no power here, no voice in these markets. But when he saw the fear in her eyes hidden beneath her calm expression, he knew he could not turn away. He studied the scene quickly. There were 6 guards with weapons, and a crowd watching. A direct fight would be impossible. Daniel was not a soldier anymore. He was only one man with sharp eyes and quick hands. If he was going to act, he had to be clever. He noticed a cargo vehicle parked near the edge of the square, its driver distracted by another merchant. Behind the slavers, one of the cages was unlocked, waiting to hold new captives. Daniel's mind formed a plan. Moving through the crowd, he picked up a loose piece of scrap metal from the ground. With a quick flick, he threw it toward the cage. The noise drew 2 guards to check, leaving only 4 near the woman. At the same moment, Daniel pushed forward, pretending to argue with a merchant about the price of cloth. He used the confusion to step closer to the line of captives. When the slaver turned to shout at the guards, Daniel slipped behind him. His hand moved fast, grabbing the control key hanging from the slaver's belt. With one press, the cuffs around the woman's wrists clicked open. She looked at him in surprise, her eyes wide, but she stayed silent. "Follow me," Daniel whispered. Without hesitation, she did. Together, they moved toward the cargo vehicle. A guard noticed and shouted, raising his weapon. Daniel pushed the woman behind a stack of crates and swung a heavy box into the guard's chest. The man stumbled, giving them a few seconds. They ran. Daniel climbed into the driver's seat of the cargo vehicle and pulled her beside him. The engine roared as he forced it forward, smashing through the market stalls. The slavers shouted behind them, firing at the vehicle, but the crowd scattered in panic, blocking their aim. The vehicle tore through the streets of the trade world, its tires leaving smoke and dust. Daniel gripped the controls, his heart racing. Beside him, the alien woman held on tightly, but she did not scream. Instead, she looked at him with steady eyes, as if measuring who he was and why he had chosen to save her. Finally, when they reached the edge of the city, Daniel guided the vehicle into a hidden service tunnel. The noise of pursuit faded. He stopped the engine and let out a long breath. "You are free now," he said, turning toward her. The woman studied him carefully. She rubbed her wrists where the cuffs had been, then spoke in a calm, low voice. "You risked much for me." "Why?" Daniel hesitated. He had no answer ready. He only knew that leaving her there would have haunted him forever. Because no one deserves chains, he said simply. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. She bowed her head slightly, not as a prisoner, but as someone who had just found hope again. In that quiet tunnel, Daniel did not yet know who she truly was. He only knew that his choice had changed both of their paths, and danger was now following close behind. The service tunnel was dark and silent, broken only by the sound of their breathing. Daniel leaned back against the wall of the cargo vehicle, his chest still rising and falling from the escape. The alien woman sat across from him, her silver hair falling around her face. She did not look frightened anymore. Instead, her eyes studied him with calm curiosity. For a while, neither spoke. Daniel thought it best to give her space. She had just been pulled from captivity, and he knew freedom could feel unreal after such chains. Yet she did not seem lost. There was strength in her posture, a quiet fire in the way she held herself. Finally, she broke the silence. "My name is Solara," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "I'm Daniel. Human, from a far-off world." She tilted her head slightly at the word human, as if she was remembering something. Then she looked down at her wrists, rubbing the marks left by the metal cuffs. "You should not have risked yourself. The slavers will not forget. They will hunt us both now." Daniel gave a half smile. "I have been hunted before. I'm still here." Her lips curved faintly, but the smile faded quickly. She lowered her voice, as if even the walls could betray her. "You do not know who I am, do you?" Daniel frowned. "You're Solara." "I know enough." She shook her head. "No, I am more than that. I am the daughter of Emperor Kalian. I am the heir to the Illyrian Empire." The words hung heavy in the tunnel. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. He had heard stories of the Illyrian Empire, vast fleets, shining cities, and rulers said to be almost untouchable. For years, whispers had spread through space that the heir of the empire had been lost, perhaps killed. And now, this young woman sat across from him, claiming that title. "You are the princess," he said slowly, testing the words. She nodded. "Yes. My ship was attacked during a journey across the Empire's borders. Traitors within our own court sold me to slavers to keep me hidden. If my people believe I am dead, the Empire will weaken. Rivals will rise. Chaos will spread." Daniel let out a low breath. It all made sense now, the way she carried herself, the strength in her eyes even when in chains. She was not just a victim. She was someone raised to lead. "But why tell me?" Daniel asked. "I'm only a stranger. A human. Your people do not even see us as equals." Solara's gaze softened. "Because you saved me when no one else would. You treated me as more than property, more than a prize. That is rare in this galaxy." Daniel looked away for a moment, feeling the weight of her words. He had not thought of himself as special. He had only followed his conscience. Yet to her, that act carried meaning far greater than he expected. Outside, distant engines roared. The slavers were searching. Time was running short. Daniel turned back to Solara. "If what you say is true, then we cannot stay here. They will not stop until they have you again." She nodded. "I must return to my people, to the imperial capital. But the journey is long and dangerous. Many want me silenced forever." Daniel stood, adjusting the small pack he carried. Then we'll need a ship. Something fast, something that can hide us. Silara's eyes widened slightly. You mean to stay with me? Daniel shrugged. I started this rescue. I won't abandon it halfway. Besides, I'm curious to see how a princess of the Empire repays her debts. For the first time, Silara let out a small laugh, light and genuine. You are bold, Daniel of Earth. Boldness can be a gift or a curse. Most of the time, both, Daniel replied with a grin. They left the cargo vehicle behind and moved deeper into the tunnels, careful with every step. Above them, the trade world city was alive with shouts and patrols searching for them. Yet in the silence between their footsteps, something had changed. Silara was no longer just a rescued stranger. She was the heir to a throne, a symbol of an empire's hope. And Daniel, a lone human traveler, had placed himself at her side without hesitation. The journey ahead would be filled with danger, but as they walked together into the shadows, Silara felt something she had not known for a long time: trust. And Daniel felt something new as well. For the first time since leaving Earth, he was no longer wandering without purpose. He had a mission now. A mission that could shape the fate of more than just himself. The trade world was no longer safe. Patrol ships circled the skies, scanning every port and hangar. Slaver banners flashed on giant screens, showing rewards for anyone who reported the human fugitive and the silver-haired woman. Daniel and Silara moved through back alleys, avoiding the main streets, always listening for footsteps behind them. Daniel knew they needed a ship. Without one, the slavers would trap them on this world like prey in a cage. Silara kept her hood pulled low, but her presence still drew attention. Even in simple clothes, her posture and calm expression set her apart from the common crowds. They reached a small docking bay on the city's edge. Daniel had heard rumors of an old pilot there who dealt in stolen ships. It was a risk, but there was no choice. Inside the bay, engines hummed and the air smelled of fuel. Ships of all sizes rested in shadow, some broken, others waiting for their next owner. An old alien mechanic looked up as they entered. His eyes narrowed at Daniel, then shifted toward Silara. You bring trouble with you, human, he said in a rough voice. Daniel forced a smile. Only a little. We need a ship. Something fast. Something that can vanish when scanners look for it. The mechanic studied them for a long moment, then sighed. Follow me. He led them to a sleek but worn freighter hidden behind larger vessels. Its hull was patched, and one wing bore scorch marks, but the design was built for speed. She's old, but she'll fly. Cloak systems still work. Price is high. Daniel's pockets were nearly empty. He had only a few credits left. Silara stepped forward, her eyes steady. We cannot pay with money. But if we survive this journey, the Empire itself will remember your name. The mechanic frowned, ready to dismiss her, but then froze. He looked closer at her face, at the silver hair and noble bearing. His eyes widened with recognition, though he said nothing. Instead, he nodded slowly. Take it. I have no wish to stand in the way of destiny. Within minutes, Daniel and Silara boarded the freighter. The cockpit smelled of old metal, but the controls lit up with life. Daniel gripped the pilot's chair, testing the engines. Hold on, he said. The ship lifted into the air, engines roaring as they pushed through the docking bay doors. For a moment, Daniel felt a rush of freedom. But then alarms screamed. Patrol ships spotted them. 2 fighters incoming, Silara warned, watching the radar. Daniel pulled the controls hard. The freighter shot upward, weaving between the towers of the city. Laser fire streaked past, shaking the hull. Solara held onto the seat, her face calm even in the storm. "Can this thing fight?" Daniel asked. "Not well," she replied. "But it can hide." She pressed a sequence on the console. The ship shimmered, its image bending as the cloak activated. The patrol fighters roared past, missing their target. Daniel let out a sharp breath, forcing his hands to stay steady on the controls. They broke free of the city's atmosphere, entering the endless dark of space. Stars stretched in every direction, cold and distant. For a brief moment, silence returned. But Solara's expression grew tense. "It will not end here. The slavers know I live. They will chase us across the stars." Daniel leaned back, his heart still pounding from the escape. "Let them chase. We'll stay ahead." She turned her eyes toward him. "You speak with such certainty." Daniel shrugged. "On Earth, we had a saying. Run fast enough, and even the wolves grow tired." For the first time since leaving the city, Solara laughed softly. The sound eased the tension in the cabin. But the moment was brief. Behind them, far away, signals appeared on the scanners. More ships were coming. Daniel set the freighter's course toward open space. He had no grand plan, only determination. Solara sat beside him, her gaze steady on the stars. Together, they knew the journey ahead would not be a simple flight. It would be a pursuit, one that would test them both. In that fragile silence, Daniel realized something. The galaxy was vast, filled with powers greater than humanity. Yet here he was, a lone human, sitting beside the heir of an empire. Against all odds, he was no longer running alone. And though danger followed close behind, the stars ahead felt wide with possibility. The freighter glided silently through the endless black of space. Stars drifted past like scattered jewels, but Daniel's focus was fixed on the glowing map in front of him. Their course pointed straight toward the heart of the Illyrian Empire. For Solara, it meant going home. For Daniel, it meant stepping into a world that had no place for humans. After days of travel, the freighter finally neared the border. The scanners flashed with signals of great fleets. Massive warships floated like giants, their sleek designs shining under the light of distant suns. Each vessel carried weapons strong enough to destroy cities. Daniel felt the weight of their presence. "This is your empire?" Daniel asked quietly. Solara's eyes softened with pride. "Yes. This is Illyria. A people of tradition, strength, and unity. But also a people divided. My absence has opened old wounds." As if to prove her words, a voice crackled through the comm system. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself. You are entering restricted space." Daniel looked at Solara. She nodded. "Transmit my code." When Daniel pressed the sequence she gave him, silence followed. Then the voice returned, sharper than before. "Impossible. This code belongs to the Imperial heir, declared lost." Solara leaned forward, her tone calm yet firm. "I am Solara Kalian, daughter of the Emperor. Open your channels and you will see my face." Her image appeared on their screens. The officers on the other end froze. Shock spread across their faces, followed by hurried movements. "Prepare for escort," one of them said quickly. "The heir has returned." The freighter was surrounded by a fleet and guided toward the imperial capital. Daniel watched from the cockpit window as the planet came into view. It was enormous, a world of endless cities built in layers of silver and crystal. Towers rose higher than mountains, and glowing bridges connected floating platforms across the sky. Ships of every size filled the air, a living storm of motion. When they landed, Solara stepped out first. Her posture was straight, her chin lifted, every movement filled with quiet dignity. Crowds gathered as word spread. Whispers of disbelief turned into cries of joy. The air was alive. But not everyone looked pleased. Noble officials dressed in rich robes approached quickly, their eyes sharp with suspicion. At their center was Lord Vaynor, a tall figure with a cold smile. He bowed only slightly. Princess Solara. What a surprise. We had thought you gone forever. Solara's gaze did not waver. I have returned. And I bring with me the truth. There are traitors among us, those who conspired to see me taken. Vaynor's smile did not falter. Such claims are heavy. Perhaps your time in captivity has clouded your memory. Before Solara could reply, his eyes shifted toward Daniel. And what is this creature you bring with you? A human, of all things. Do you expect the Empire to accept that you travel with such a being? The crowd murmured. Many looked at Daniel with distrust. Humans were seen as lesser, wanderers without power. Daniel felt their stares like heavy chains. But Solara spoke firmly. This human risked his life to save me. When my own people abandoned me, he did not. He is no creature. He is my ally. The words cut through the air. Some nobles sneered, others exchanged uncertain glances. Daniel stood still, not flinching under their gaze. He had faced worse before, and he would not bow now. Later, inside the Grand Palace, Solara faced the Council of Elders. Daniel stood at her side, though every pair of eyes in the chamber seemed to judge him. The council questioned her story, demanded proof, and whispered doubts. Solara answered each with calm strength. At one point, an elder leaned forward. And why should we believe this human had no hand in your capture? Perhaps he is part of the scheme. Daniel felt anger rise, but before he could speak, Solara raised her hand. No. He freed me when no one else dared. He carried me through fire and storm. His courage is greater than his size, and his heart stronger than his weapons. If you will not see his worth, then you will see mine. I stand with him. The chamber fell silent. The nobles did not cheer, but the message was clear. The heir had spoken, and her loyalty to the human was unshaken. As they left the council, Daniel glanced at Solara. That was a dangerous stand to take. She met his eyes with quiet certainty. A leader must show who they trust. I will not hide the truth. You are part of my story now, Daniel of Earth. And though the Empire's halls glittered with power and danger, Daniel felt something stir inside him. For the first time, he was no longer a stranger in her world. He was part of it. The palace of Elira was bright with golden light, its endless halls filled with murals of past rulers and victories. Yet behind the beauty, Daniel could feel the tension in every glance. Servants bowed quickly but whispered after Solara passed. Guards saluted her, but their eyes carried doubt. The Empire had believed her dead for years, and not everyone welcomed her sudden return. Solara moved with calm strength, yet Daniel noticed how tightly she held her hands at her side. She had grown up here, but the palace no longer felt like home. Too many eyes watched, waiting for her to falter. That night, in her private chamber, Solara spoke quietly to Daniel. The council does not trust me. They believe lies spread during my absence. And now that I have returned, enemies within the empire will not rest. They will try to silence me again. Daniel nodded. He had already felt the hostility from nobles like Lord Vaynor. If they see you as a threat to their power, then they'll strike from the shadows. We'll have to be ready. The next morning, the first sign came. As Solara walked through the palace gardens, a bright dart shot from the trees. Daniel reacted instantly, pulling her aside. The dart struck the wall behind them, releasing smoke. Guards rushed forward, but the attacker had already escaped. Whispers spread faster than fire. Some said the heir was weak and could not protect herself. Others claimed her human companion had brought danger into the heart of the empire. Daniel heard the words but ignored them. He cared only for Solara's safety. Later that day, in the council chamber, Lord Vaynor raised his voice with cold confidence. The heir is unfit. Her time with strangers has clouded her judgment. She brings a human into these halls, and already assassins strike at our gates. This empire cannot be ruled by someone so easily corrupted. Solara stood tall, her voice calm. I am not corrupted. I am strengthened. What I learned in captivity has shown me the value of courage, loyalty, and unity. Qualities my people will need now more than ever. The council divided. Some nodded at her words. Others whispered doubts. Daniel stood silently at her side, but he could feel the weight of their stares. To them, he was still a problem, a reminder of her time among outsiders. That night, Solara and Daniel walked the palace balconies, overlooking the glowing city below. Ships moved like fireflies in the dark sky, while lights spread across endless towers. Solara's expression was thoughtful. My people are proud, she said softly. But pride can blind them. They think strength comes only from tradition, from bloodlines, and power. They do not yet see that strength can come from those who have nothing but hope. Daniel leaned against the railing, watching her carefully. On earth, leaders often rose from humble places. Some were not born to power, but they proved themselves by their actions. Maybe your people need to see that too. Solara turned her gaze toward him. Perhaps that is why fate placed you beside me. Before Daniel could answer, alarms echoed across the palace. Guards shouted, rushing down the halls. Solara grabbed his arm, and together they ran toward the noise. In the council wing, they found destruction, doors smashed, walls scorched. Several guards lay injured, and the imperial seal burned on the floor. A shaken guard saluted Solara. An attack, princess. Rebels loyal to Vaynor's faction. They wanted to seize the council. Solara's face hardened, but her voice remained steady. Then the empire is already at war with itself. My return has not healed the wounds. It has exposed them. Daniel looked at her, realizing the danger was greater than either of them had thought. This was not only about her throne. It was about survival of the entire empire. If she failed, chaos would spread across the stars. That night, as the palace quieted again, Daniel sat alone in his chamber, staring at the stars through the window. He was only one man, a human among giants. Yet somehow, he had become part of a struggle that could decide the fate of countless worlds. When Solara entered the room, her silver hair glowing faintly in the starlight, her voice was calm but firm. Daniel, the empire is breaking. I cannot face this storm alone. I need you with me. Daniel met her gaze, and in her eyes he saw not just the heir of a throne, but someone who believed in him. For the first time, he understood the full weight of their journey. It was not only her destiny at stake now, it was theirs, bound together against the shadows rising within the empire. The palace grew quieter after the attack, but Daniel knew the silence was only a mask. Danger had not passed. Silara's enemies were gathering strength, whispering in hidden halls, waiting for the moment to strike again. Silara spent her days meeting with the council, trying to prove her claim, but many doubted her. At night, she and Daniel planned together, speaking of threats and hopes. In those hours, Daniel began to notice how differently they saw the world. Silara thought like a ruler, careful and bound by tradition. She measured each step, weighed every word, and always considered how history would judge her actions. Daniel, on the other hand, had no throne, no legacy. He spoke with the bluntness of a soldier and the imagination of a wanderer. He valued what worked, not what looked proper. One evening, in the quiet of the gardens, Silara voiced her worry. "My people see me as fragile. They believe I was broken by slavery, that I am unfit to rule. They think a true heir must show only strength." Daniel shook his head. "Strength isn't just about power. On Earth, we survived not because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we helped each other, because we adapted. We found ways to endure, even when the world seemed impossible." Silara listened carefully. His words carried a kind of wisdom she had never heard in the Empire's halls. She looked at him with thoughtful eyes. "You speak of unity, of survival through trust. Perhaps that is the lesson I must show them." Days later, news came that Lord Vaynar's forces had risen openly. A fleet loyal to him marched toward the capital. The council panicked, some demanding Silara step down, others begging for her to lead. The empire balanced on the edge of war. In the council chamber, Silara stood before the elders. Daniel watched from her side, silent but steady. Silara spoke with calm fire. "Our empire has always believed in strength through bloodlines and power. But that belief has blinded us. I survived not because of our fleets or our armies. I survived because a human, a man with no crown and no title, risked everything to save me. He had nothing but his courage and his will to stand against injustice. That is true strength. That is what will carry us through this storm." The chamber stirred. Some scoffed at the idea, but others leaned forward, their expressions uncertain. Daniel saw doubt in their eyes begin to shift, just a little. Silara raised her voice. "If you believe I am unfit, then watch me lead. If you believe humans are weak, then watch what courage looks like when hope is nearly gone. Together, we will face Vaynar's fleet. Together, we will show that unity is stronger than pride." That night, preparations filled the palace. Warships launched from the docks, soldiers lined the walls, and strategy was whispered across every hall. Silara stood at the center, commanding with steady hands. Yet she allowed Daniel to sit at her table, his voice equal among generals. Daniel surprised them with ideas. He suggested using decoys, false signals, and traps that would confuse the enemy. Where the Empire's commanders thought only of direct battles, Daniel thought of survival and surprise. His mind worked like a soldier who had lived with too few weapons and too many enemies. At first, the generals resisted. But Silara silenced them. "We will try his way. He has saved me before. I trust him now." When the battle began, the Empire shook. Vaynar's fleet darkened the skies, their ships forming a wall of steel. But Silara's forces did not meet them head-on. They followed Daniel's plan. Small ships darted in and out, creating confusion. False beacons tricked enemy sensors. Traps hidden in asteroid fields tore through the first wave. From the command bridge, Solara watched as her people fought with renewed spirit. She turned to Daniel. "Your way is working." Daniel gave a small smile. "Sometimes the wolves only need to be shown they can bleed." By the end of the battle, Vaynar's fleet was broken. His ships fled into the dark, leaving the capital safe. Cheers erupted across the empire, but Solara remained calm. She knew this victory was only the beginning. That night, she and Daniel stood together on the palace balcony. The city glowed beneath them, alive with celebration. Solara's voice was quiet but strong. "You gave my people something they had forgotten. You showed them that survival is not only about strength, but about courage and unity. That is humanity's gift." Daniel looked at her, the starlight reflecting in her silver eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just what happens when people refuse to give up." Solara smiled faintly. For the first time, she felt that her empire might truly have a future, one shaped not just by old traditions, but by new hope carried from a far-off world. The capital of Elyra pulsed with celebration. Lanterns glowed across the skies, fleets flew in formation, and crowds filled the streets. News of Solara's victory over Vaynar's fleet spread like fire through the empire. After years of doubt and division, hope had returned. The heir had proven her strength. Inside the grand palace, Solara walked through the shining halls with Daniel at her side. Everywhere they went, servants bowed low, and soldiers saluted. Yet Daniel noticed how many eyes still lingered on him with unease. The Empire might respect Solara, but humans were still strangers in their world. That evening, the council gathered in the throne chamber. The air was heavy with expectation. For centuries, the throne had been passed only to heirs proven by blood and trial. Solara had faced both, and now the moment had come. She stepped forward, her silver hair glowing under the chamber lights. Her voice carried across the hall with calm strength. "I stand before you not as a victim, but as your heir. My captivity did not break me. It opened my eyes. I learned that true power is not found in chains or in fear. It is found in courage, in unity, and in hope. These are the gifts we must carry into the future." The council bowed in acceptance. The ceremony began, ancient symbols of rulership placed before her. When she finally seated herself on the throne, the chamber erupted in cheers. Solara Kalian, heir of the empire, had ascended. Daniel stood quietly in the shadows, watching. He felt pride for her, though he knew the throne was never meant for him. His place was not among emperors and nobles. He was a traveler, a wanderer who had happened to cross paths with destiny. Later that night, when the halls were quiet and the celebration softened into distant music, Solara found him on the palace balcony. He leaned against the railing, staring at the endless stars. "You do not join the feast," she said softly. Daniel shook his head with a faint smile. "This is your moment, not mine." Solara stepped beside him. For a while, they stood in silence, watching the city below. Finally, she spoke. "You think you have no place here. But you are wrong. Without you, I would still be in chains. Without you, I would not have found the strength to stand before the council. This empire owes you more than it can ever repay." Daniel looked at her, his eyes steady. "I didn't do it for repayment. I just couldn't walk away." Her lips curved into a gentle smile. "That is exactly why you matter. My people follow traditions and titles, but you followed only what you believed was right. That is the gift humanity has given me, and now, through me, to the empire." He said nothing for a long time, only watched the stars. At last, he straightened and gave a quiet laugh. I think it's time I leave before I get too comfortable in a palace. Silara's smile faded, but she did not argue. She knew his spirit was restless, tied not to thrones but to journeys. Still, her voice carried warmth. Then promise me this. Wherever you travel, you will remember that you are not alone. You will always have a place here. Daniel nodded. And if the Empire ever needs me, you know where to find me. The next morning, a ship stood ready at the docks. It was not grand, but fast and sturdy, just the kind Daniel liked. Silara walked with him to the ramp, guards and nobles watching from a respectful distance. Before he boarded, she touched his arm. You may not wear a crown, Daniel of Earth, but in the eyes of my people, you will always be remembered as the one who returned their heir. And in my eyes, you will always be more than that. You will be the one who showed me what true strength means. Daniel gave her a small, honest smile. Take care of your empire, Silara. Make it something worth saving. With those words, he turned and entered the ship. Engines roared to life, and the vessel lifted into the sky. Silara stood on the platform, her silver hair flowing in the wind, watching as the ship disappeared into the sea of stars. She did not feel sadness. She felt resolve. Daniel had given her more than freedom. He had given her a vision of a future where her empire could be greater than before. That would be her legacy, and his gift would live within it. Far above, in the endless dark, Daniel's ship became a single light among countless stars. He had no crown, no throne, and no empire. But he carried something just as powerful: the knowledge that even one human, acting with courage, could change the fate of worlds.